quite a few people. Okay. Hi, Harlan, and good afternoon, everybody. And I'm just going to introduce our distinguished guests today briefly. So Dr. Harlan Krumholz is a cardiologist, leading research scientist, professor of medicine at Yale School of Medicine, where he has been on the faculty since 1992. He is a
Oh my gosh, you had to say that.
He is a pioneer. I'm taking
Okay,
this off of your Wikipedia.
it's okay. You don't have to read, but you don't have to read.
I want to. Let's see, where am I? He is a pioneer in the development of the field of outcomes research, and his groundbreaking contributions have led to improvements in healthcare outcomes for patients and populations. He is the founder and director of the Yale New Haven Hospital Center for Outcomes Research and Evaluation. He has published over 1,000 articles and is one of the most prolific and highly cited researchers in the world. We are honored and privileged to have Dr. Krumholz and his wife Leslie, as well as Doctors Bornali Bhattacharjee and Cesar Carballo joining in the discussion. Please welcome this amazing group of researchers. And would everyone please go on mute, and I will turn this over to Harlan now.
Or anybody can say anything anytime they want. So there's a couple, and actually Leslie couldn't make it because of a conflict, but she's actually welcome to visit with you guys at another time too. And I'm here with Cesar and Bornali, work as research associates on some of these projects. And my thought was that this was sort of an informal interaction where we could just talk and I could explain a little bit about what we're doing, who I am, what we're trying to accomplish. I could present slides, but I thought maybe it's just better to have a conversation, and then I can show you things if you've got questions. But the idea really isn't, I'm also not trying to sell you anything. I'm just trying to figure out if there's opportunities to work together, and I want to answer questions about what we're doing. So let me say, to get started, that I'm a cardiologist. As Denise said, I've been at Yale for a long time. And when the pandemic started, I like a lot of people, I had skills to help, and I felt the need to try to jump in and see whether or not, we could use our group and the kind of knowledge and skills that we had to try to bring some insight to what was going on with the pandemic. And Connecticut was, one of the states that was hit first in the US. And so, there was a lot of commotion around us, and we wanted to help. So we did a bunch of studies around acute COVID, trying to understand how it was spreading, who was at risk, what was the impact, what could we maybe do about it, how could we improve quality of care. And in the course of doing that work, then I began to appreciate that for many people after the acute phase, it wasn't over. And I began to be in contact with groups that were starting to assemble around long COVID, and recognizing that we were standing at a moment in time where there could be an awful lot of suffering without much, for a long time, without much progress, if we didn't start to move in a position to try to learn from what was going on and try to help. And that this story had been told before. It wasn't the first time that post-viral syndromes had been talked about, but that whether it was lack of resources or imagination, or just how difficult it is to study or crack, not a lot of progress had been made. And I began to think that we needed to get involved in trying to help that. In the course of working on long COVID, I also encountered lots of people like you who had stories to tell that were shocking and disheartening and concerning, around reactions that persisted soon after having received a vaccine. And again, this story is not new. Vaccines and vaccine injury have been described for a long time, but it did seem that it was something that was happening that was a bit more profound. And for many people, it was unraveling their lives. And that they were sort of caught in the crossfire of the political realities of people trying to get everyone on board with getting vaccines, the narrative of starting to talk about people who are suffering from injury as a result of vaccines wasn't something that that many people wanted to touch. And and so people like you were experiencing, like people with long COVID, a medical care system that didn't recognize the pattern, was often dismissive of the cluster of symptoms, where there was an absence of any diagnostic test that was providing people with information that was supporting the symptoms that people were reporting, because all of them were sort of missing the point somehow. I say they're just insensitive. I guess could mean that the health system was insensitive, but when we say insensitive about the testing, just meaning that the tests weren't sensitive enough to be able to pick up what was abnormal. And so a lot of normal results were being generated, but the sense was that maybe people are looking in the wrong place and they're missing the point about what's causing this. And when I started talking to people and talked to Denise, I said, well, of course we need to start pulling this group in, and to the extent that we can, and beginning to study systematically as much as possible. Plus, you, just like a lot of long COVID groups, started generating your own data. You became citizen scientists, and we're starting to give your own questionnaires and try to understand what was going on. But on the research side, as far as I could see, that there were a paucity of credible researchers who were jumping in to want to be part of this. By the way, in the long COVID story, there are also, it's not a ticket to career advancement to jump into an area where you can't even define the condition. And that, and then especially in the vaccine injury side, where like the entire government would prefer it would go away and not exist because it's counter to the narrative that they want to promote. So, I understand why people don't want to do it. I guess I'm in a more fortunate position of being at a senior point in my career where, I don't care. Like, no one's ever told me anyway, like what I can and can't do. And I generally follow what I think is important. And in this case, I thought this seemed like it was something very important to try to understand. And I also felt that not only should we be driven to try to relieve the suffering, but you people are highly vulnerable to what people might be promoting to you, or you're in a position of desperation, so that you can also be, you're highly vulnerable population for that reason. I mean, people could take advantage of you because of that, and so you're in a vulnerable position. And I thought that if we can learn something together, then this may help a lot of other conditions that are sort of medical mysteries right now, because this stands as a big medical mystery for a lot of people. And then one more thing was, as Denise knows, for a long time, I've been trying to tip the balance of power in the way in which research is conducted. The traditional approach, much like medicine itself, is one of a hierarchical structure. I know some of you are healthcare professionals, and I know, and Denise, I know you, of course you are. So I don't know whether these words are welcome or not to you, but I've felt for a long time that we need a partnership model in medicine, not one where, we walk in a room and just tell people what to do and they just either, follow our directions, or else, they need to find somebody else because they're bad patients, or that, they don't do it. I believe that patients have a lot of wisdom, and that they live with the experience of the illness and can provide insights into that. Plus, we have a research infrastructure right now where largely what happens is that researchers put themselves on top. They go out and try to recruit people. It takes way too long. So here you've got people for whom you're doing research to try to provide new information that will help them, and you can't recruit them. And part of the reason is because I don't think people feel part of it. They don't feel part of the team. So you chase down to get people in the studies. The studies aren't configured in ways that are meant to relieve burden and to maximize insight and a sense of community between researchers and participants. I've told Denise, like I've dispensed with the word subjects. I think subjects implies a hierarchy, and we shouldn't be talking about research subjects. We should be talking about people who are participating and people who are partners. there's a thing that came out of the Affordable Care Act called the Patient-Centered Research Outcomes Research Institute. And I was on one of the founding governors, and I kept pushing them to try to adopt this model. They did to some extent, like putting patients on review committees, but they still, I believe, didn't fully trust patients enough to fully empower them as partners in the process. And I started this thing called patient-powered research networks, where here was my idea: give the money to the patients and let them hire the researchers, because you could give them support and put guardrails around it, but that meant that the researchers had to pitch to the patients, their ideas, and then that put the position of decision-making within the patients who are, but there's no one more motivated for progress than people who are suffering from the condition, and give them the responsibility to figure out who's going to get in it. They didn't really buy the idea. And
I have PTSD every day.
Picori's done a lot of good things, but they didn't go far enough, in my opinion.
Well, I really want to hear your thoughts on this.
John,
Sean, are you asking a question?
no, he muted himself. Okay.
Oh, okay. I'll stop soon so you guys can ask questions. Or Sean, do you want to ask a question?
Is everyone on mute? We can
Oh,
unmute when we're ready to ask questions.
Okay. So anyway, I just said I have a strong urge to try to demonstrate the proof of concept that we can create a way for people to all work together, and for the people who are participating to be really considered partners. Now, I also admit I was socialized in a system that was very hierarchical. So I need help to be good at this, because I know that I still relapse into like a traditional researcher sometimes. So it's like, you need strong partners who can tell you the truth and help you to keep on course with this. So the Listen study came about because I ended up talking with Akiko Iwasaki, who many of you may know is like a world-renowned immunologist. And Akiko had been publishing a bunch of papers around COVID and starting to publish on long COVID. And she was developing a set of assays around immune function that would measure like 2,000 or 3,000 features of your immune system: cytokines, chemokines, antibodies, T cell receptors, B cell characteristics. I mean, I was like, took me back to my beginning of medical school, because I hadn't really been as immersed in basic immunology since then. And I've been learning a lot. Bernali's in that lab. Cesar more works with me, but we do more clinical research, but we're learning a lot about it. But meanwhile, they're world's experts. And it seemed to me that we could put together a study where we began to characterize people with long COVID or vaccine injury and kind of respectively. I think you got to keep them separate for the moment. But people are experiencing such a wide range of things that we can start to create kind of a multi-dimensional map of like who's more similar and who's more different, who's alike, who's not. How are people allocating? If we can start, and you guys have already started this path because you were asking a lot of questions about symptoms. And then I've been working on questionnaires, and Denise, like you were, authoritative in helping to like craft this, what we should include, what we should, and it can be iterative, like it's just the first effort at it. And we can start to see this in space, almost like, well, who's like each other, who's different, what's it look like? And then if we can, for a few people, we can say like, well, let's see whether or not, if we run through this very extensive immune characterization, does that track with how people are experiencing this? And is it giving us any insight into the underlying mechanism and moving us towards diagnostics and what might be the cause of it? Now, we were just in a lab meeting, and we were also saying, maybe there's some things we can do short of the 3,000 assays, like just to get moving, because you can only do so many of them. And so like maybe there's ways even to go faster. And we were looking at like, you can send to people's homes a little kit where they can just like, it's almost like a finger prick. They can get a finger prick worth of blood. And maybe we can do that. With that, we think we can look at autoantibodies, for example, look at 2,000 autoantibodies and see whether or not there's any evidence of something that comes up. And and like we can keep moving on this track, but the idea was to start to characterize people who are having this and to start correlating it with underlying biology. We've also been talking about maybe we can get a hold of scans. We've got some advanced machine learning and AI that can look at scans and see whether or not there's information in scans, even that radiologists can't see, but information that you can elicit from the imaging biomarkers that also track maybe with the immunology. So there's lots of different directions that we can take. And Akiko had gotten some funding from the Howard Hughes Medical Institute. But my thought was, if we could show proof of concept where we get a bunch of people working together, contributing their information, in some cases, trying to correlate it with imaging or with what we're seeing with the biology, like, can we start sparking this? And also the idea is not that, like, that here's the traditional research. Here's another battle I fight within research, which is we're fighting against disease. I'm not competing against other researchers. In fact, I want to collaborate with as many smart people as possible who want to be part of this. So to the extent that we can create de-identified resources that we can get more scientists to work on, we want to do this. Like, so then it's not about, I've got a sequestered resource that I get to tap and it's about building my career. It's more about, like, how do we start to build a resource that as many smart people, including you all, can have access to, and for people who have tools and skills, we can start getting a lot of people looking at it different ways, because we're going to need some creativity and thought. So I'm very strongly committed to the idea of open science. So I'm not trying to build a database that only I can mine or only Akiko can mine, but rather can we do it in ways that maintain security and privacy, but at the same time start to let more researchers in. And then the one other facet of this that's, I think, important to both tell you about and disclose was, so when I left that PCORI board, that Patient-Centered Outcomes Research Board, frustrated that the patient-powered research networks never were able to take off, began to think about, well, part of it is we need a tool, a mechanism, a way to be able to do this. And I couldn't figure out exactly how to do it. So I did a startup that was going to build a technology that enabled people to connect to their data sources and have that data flow into a secure cloud-based account that they would have agency over. And then for a study, they could agree to share their data. And so you could connect through your portal connections to pharmacies and health systems and labs and wearables. And then that data all flows in. And then here's the promise is no data moves without your permission. That data does not get sold. There's no surveillance capitalism to it. It's anti-surveillance capitalism. It's about empowerment of individuals. And then if you want to be part of a study, you can be part of the study. And what we try to ensure is that all the studies that were done, including our Listen study, if we generate data about you, we should, to the extent that we can, deposit that data back into your account. So then if you join another study, that your data assets grow. And also, once you've connected to the data, then you don't have to do anything more. It's automated. It's kind of like your data is dumping into your account all the time. Now, one day in the future, I'd like to create it so it's almost like a personal health record. So you can actually look at your data. You can share your data, like with loved ones or caregivers or whoever you want. Like we're trying to get there, but like we're still like trying to be highly efficient. There's not a lot of capital in the beginning. It was just all our savings because I didn't want to bring in investors who would tell us to take shortcuts or try to sell people's data or do stuff. We're now like in a position where we're going to try to bring in some more resources and hope to build out some of these other features. But the promise of it is that, it's about empowerment and protection and agency of the people and their data. And just to be, again, transparent about the business model is through these partnerships, maybe we can, that is by helping to support the studies, the flow of data into studies and the organization of data into studies, that can help create a sustainable model that keeps this thing going. But we've got a really good technology stack now. And then the one final thing about it was that we sort of thought like, well, when we first started, we started working with traditional researchers. And what I know I may be boring you with all this, I'll just finish the end, which is that that they wanted to use this just as a data pipeline. So like they signed up people for their projects, and then they would urge the people in the studies to connect to their data sources, and the data flew in, but they weren't trying to partner with people. Like, and they were sort of just singularly focused on the old way of doing things. So then Leslie and I said, like, well, you know what? I think we should wonder if we should start building this out where we go straight to people. And like the idea of Kindred. So Hugo's Health is the overarching company, but then the Kindred community was saying, build a place where people can join. They get the opportunity to join studies. Their data assets are growing. And it's kind of like that idea I had with Picori, where like people have to come to them about being in studies. It's not like, you know, the study doesn't own you. Too many of these studies think they own the people in the study. And then the data that's generated in that study isn't fungible. It can't go to another study because, like, I'm a Yale researcher. I just generated this data. That's my data and you're my subject in the study. But in this conception, this data in you is growing. And if somebody else has a study that meets our criteria, they're going to treat you with respect, protect your data, treat you as a partner. They get listed. You can share your data with them too. And why not? Like it was an idea that we could start to use a force multiplier approach to all this. And anyway, I like I said, I know many of you don't even feel well. So like hearing me just go talk on like this, like it's not necessarily a best thing for you, but it's like I'm just trying to explain like all the philosophy and approach behind it. So getting back to Listen, we went through Yale, we got IRB approval. And then what we do is people come on Listen, come on Kindred, this community, they connect to their data, they fill out surveys. That data becomes part of their asset. And then we get their consent to come into Listen, and then they can enter into the Listen. That data becomes available into the Listen study. And then Listen may reach out to some of them and say, would you be interested in donating blood or saliva or sharing your images? And then we can augment the database with that. And anything that we get out of that should come back to you on the platform. And by the way, anybody can leave the platform anytime you want. If you tell Hugo you want us to erase your data, we can erase your data. I mean, the whole point of it's not to make it difficult so that you can't, your data's stuck or things are hard for you, but make it easy for you. But let me open it to questions because I was just yapping for a long time. But I don't know, you can tell me what was clear or what wasn't clear and all that.
Thank you. That was a great summary. And we're all very excited to hear about any prospects of research about what we're going through. So,
I think the first thing I should have led with, just say one more thing, is I believe you. Like I'm not, you're not talking to someone who needs to be convinced. I know that you guys are suffering.
Yeah.
So, I should have led with that. Like, it's sort of like, this isn't, I mean, I deeply believe it. So the question is sort of like, how do we get from here to there? And another thing we should be doing is just amplifying the message. I'm not afraid to say, I believe it, I even in Listen, I say we're studying vaccine injury, but I see a lot of people afraid to say it. I don't know if you guys have experienced it like that, but like a lot of people afraid to embrace that. And I think part of it is, like, I'll say it to anybody. I say it to reporters all the time. I say it's real. It's real. And and I say I've got no idea what's behind it, but I can tell you this: there are many people suffering, and who developed things that unraveled their lives soon after they got vaccine. And I don't need to be convinced. I am convinced. So that's why I believe we need to do something about it. So I'm good. Some hands are up. Sorry about that, Denise. I just want to say that I should have started with that, just to say out loud.
do you want to call on people or how would you like to do this?
Yeah, I know, Nancy. I'll just call on whoever's hands are. Nancy, you want to go first?
Hi, I'm just wondering if you or someone else can possibly share their screen and walk us through the steps of the website, because to be transparent, I went there and I tried to start clicking on things and follow the directions, and I found it overwhelming, and so I just clicked out.
And I'm so glad you said that, because I know I've been talking to Leslie about that. I can actually we'll see whether she needs to hear this too. So you're going on this journey with us together. And part of our journey is like, we stub our toes. Like, we're not a big, tech company that like has got millions of people who figured out the UI UX on this. And I said to Leslie, and others have said this to us, it's too confusing and not easy enough to navigate. So I think that we need to, so the group is working hard on this right now to try to make this easier. And I can also have her, we can do bunches of things. She can come on, the team can come on from Hugo and listen and show you guys like what, listen to the Yale study, Hugo's the platform, but we can take people through, we can do videos, we want to make it as easy as possible. And we're looking for your help. Like, tell us what like drives you crazy or isn't working or what can be better. But Nancy, that is such an important thing you said. I will, maybe I can work with you guys to think about how best to manage this. But
yeah, I don't know. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Can someone? Oh, okay. I think like, the problem I'm having too is, I'm just speaking, you can tell there's something wrong with my brain. Is that it's, at least for me, and I think for most of us, it's hard to follow directions, anything complicated. Like, we have a bunch of ideas but we're just kind of like all a bunch of squirrels on meth, like it's a frantic pace. But even the website I had a part of helping with, I still don't know how to use yet, so definitely like something just extremely user friendly, or even if we just had like people learn in different ways, especially maybe now, someone to personally like contact if we had, okay, how do I do this? Or, you know what I mean?
Well,
Like a helper.
gosh, it almost, it hits me in my heart when you say that, because like we missed the mark on that, right? Because like, if you guys, maybe some of you want to just get on with that team and really explain how straightforward it needs to be. Because
yeah, like I almost bought a jitterbug phone last week. You know what I'm saying? Like it's
I've heard this before too, and I think it would really help. Like, I can't tell you how much we want to hear this from you about what we can do to make this easier and how we ought to configure it. Maybe there's just I really, really, really appreciate this. And I think I've said this to Leslie too. And she said it to me. That we think we haven't made it easy enough. And that's probably a major barrier for people to join right now. And we have to realize
I don't think that you should take any blame on that at all. It's that I don't think people realize just how poorly our brains are functioning,
Yep.
Yeah.
Thank you. Well, let's figure out a way to get people together. And David, you want to go? I see a lot of hands, so I'll start going through quickly.
Yeah, thank you. My question is probably in regards to more of your experience dealing with long COVID. I've been through functional medicine doctors, traditional medicine doctors, all types of things, and dealt with a lot of cardiac issues. And we suspected maybe myocarditis at the beginning because of the cardiac arrhythmias I was having. But my question is more around like with, like issues that are that, I guess, detrimental to your health, like heart issues or, these severe neurological issues. Are you guys seeing, you talked about different blood tests, are you guys seeing different things? And if so, if none of the traditional markers are tripping, is that a good sign for, for example, like my troponin wasn't up or my, echocardiogram came back normal, I passed the stress test. Is that a good sign still? Or is it like, hey, we're not even looking at the right stuff and we don't know in regards to, I guess, severe injury or severe long hauler symptoms?
Mm-hmm. And I think vaccine injuries kind of has the same features to it. So I was saying the preliminary work that we've got, and by the way, we've just assembled a group of about 10 people at Yale just to get in with the bloods who are, I'm really convinced have major vaccine injury related to rheumatologic issues. So I think there are lots of similarities, but we are starting to see some signals out of it. So like there was a paper that came out last week in the Annals of Internal Medicine from the NIH that looked at long COVID, because God forbid the NIH start looking at vaccine injury. Like that's an example, right? Like the NIH probably doesn't, they're afraid to do that. But they came out and said like, well, we didn't see anything abnormal, but they didn't look at very much. you know, in my view. Like what they're basically said was what we know is if you take the usual tests that people are ordering, nothing's coming back. But what in those thousands of tests that are being run on the immune system, yeah, there are definitely some signals coming up. Now, what we have to be sure is they aren't false positives because we're measuring so many things. So, you know, it needs to be what we would say validated. We need to check it against, you know, against people. But there are things coming up for you, just to say to you, I mean, if you were my patient, I would celebrate that your troponin wasn't positive and that your echo is normal. And that would make me feel better, because what's the alternative? That the heart's been damaged visually,
Yep.
right? We're not seeing that. Same time, I take very seriously that there may be things that are going on that we're not being able to catch that we need to learn more about and look for. But I would tell you that I would take some comfort in I always tell people, you know, take comfort in what's not, what is working well.
Yeah.
You know, and if the heart's squeezing well, that's great. You know, that doesn't mean that you're not without an issue, but it means that that's still good information. That's still good data. So.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was shooting for as far as my question is like, you know, the MRI came back clear. All of my, you know, cardiac stuff. I mean, I've been told by cardiologists you can run a marathon, and I'm like, if I run a marathon, I feel like I'm going to go into VTAC. Like, I don't think that's possible. But yeah, the traditional stuff, I am celebrating that, and that's sort of giving me hope to say like, okay, well, if we can maybe figure out the immune portion or the other, whatever else is going on, I have hope that I can potentially return back to normal. And I probably share that sentiment with a lot of other people that are like, you know, we just want our lives back. And
yeah, and I think we need a lot of education, like doctors are keying on old patterns. Yeah, for other illnesses, that might be true, but for you, that might not be true that you could run a marathon because they're not recognizing what else is going on. Let me keep going,
if
just
I
because
can
a lot of people- Go ahead.
sorry,
Go ahead, Kelly.
if I can piggyback on that, like, for example, I was just hospitalized at the VA hospital for 2 days with very serious symptoms. My diagnosis was somatoform disorder and delusions. But the doctor said, well, your labs are normal. Shouldn't that make you feel better? And at the time I hadn't even seen them. They actually weren't normal. But I said, no, that doesn't make me feel better, because I can't breathe and I can't think. And I
No.
can't do, no, it does, you know, like, I mean, to
Yeah.
me, yes, we are ruling some things out, but also, like, I can't speak for anyone else. My labs have been all over the place. Like nothing has really been consistent. But I have personally, luckily, I found a private practice geneticist who will basically order anything I want. So I have been ordering things that most doctors either haven't heard of or won't do, like a full viral reactivation panel, like Lyme DNA, like gut microbiome, like, you know, so got it, but I'm spending my money. Even though I have VA coverage and private insurance, I still can't get them to think outside the box. So I guess like I kind of jumped in late, so I don't know if anybody said anything about, man, if we could just have like a fund or like one central database that like you could order these non-traditional tests from, you know, and those were vetted, because I often have to like chime in and go, no, like that person's just trying to make money off you or whatever, you know?
Well, so I appreciate that. Also, by the way, there's nothing more frustrating than not feeling right and people telling you that they don't know that you're okay when you know you're not. That there's almost nothing.
Or
worse
that
than
you're delusional when you show up with a file full of
Yeah,
pictures anyway. Yeah.
And I was only making the point that if your heart's not visually damaged, that's better than if it is visually damaged. And so, like, you know, that's good news that that's true, but it doesn't mean that somebody should tell you that, by the way, nothing's wrong with you, because you know something is.
Well, but
and-
but most like traditional medicine tests, like they're just running, like, for example, a rheumatologist just running a regular ANA test over and over again when I'm asking for ANA with reflex, or, you know, I'm asking, you know, it's happening on I think, you know, a micro macro vessel
and I think that we
mitochondrial
can-
myelin sheath level. Like it's happening on a level where most of it can't be seen, and that there aren't traditional tests for. But you know, in my experience, they've played patient hot potato with me for 15 months. No, like, that's not my job. You need this kind of doctor. No, that's not my job. You need this kind of doctor.
You're not alone in that. Let me just keep going, Kelly, but my hope is that maybe if we can that there are ways to disseminate trustworthy, credible information about what is available, but I'm so sorry for that. Let me just keep, I'll try
Yeah.
to go through folks. So Glenn, do you want to say something?
Okay, I muted myself. Okay, yeah. Yeah, I have a question. What's the best way for us to share our research with you? Because I do a lot of surveys for React 19, and so far we just don't have time to publish in academic journals.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, just you can, so I should just tell everyone, my email is harlan.krumholz@yale.edu, harlan.krumholz@yale.edu. Maybe Bernali or Cesar can just put it in, but, and also put in yours too. And you can contact any of us, and, we're glad to try to help or figure out, what to do. It'd be good to learn about what you've done. That would be great. And I'll be glad to try to amplify it, or even we can try to put it into formats that we can at least preprint. And so people can do it. I think that'd be great, Glenn. I mean, again, I think we have to have a lot of respect for citizen science, and, there are lots of talented people. And even, I mean, I've had more contact with Denise, but I mean, that she's amazing. And I know many of you are really bright and have, insights about this. So that would be great. Glenn, I'd love to hear anything you can share with me. I'd love to see it. Brenda?
Hi there. First, I'll just say thanks for volunteering your time today to speak with us. I just wanted to stress that it would definitely be important to, I think, to most of us to have that data available, our own data, because we need it to try to guide some sort of treatment. So thank you for thinking about making that available directly to us. But my question is for Canadians, like, can Canadians or folks from other countries participate, or do you see this primarily being a US-based thing, just with the difficulty of getting test kits and sending blood back to labs and things like that?
So are you Canadian?
Yes.
Yeah. So first of all, also just on the returning results, I mean, I think we could work together to figure out how best to, I have lots of ideas, like even on the surveys, how do we produce like a summary of the survey you could take into your doctor? So it's like already organized, or if you've had a bunch of tests from different places, how can we bring it together and show it in a way that makes it easy? I mean, there's lots of things. For Canada, I think I have to check on this, but I mean, I think it's possible, but like a lot of this, what this requires is an API, a way for you to provide credentials that then the system comes in on your behalf. It says, I'm Brenda, and I'm trying to get my data to put it into an account. And like, there's lots of Epic systems and so forth in Canada. So I think it's possible. I can look into it and try to get back to you with a better answer. But like in Europe, it's a little more complicated with GDPR, but actually we're GDPR compliant because we're doing it always on behalf of the person. I should have said one other thing about the platform. We don't own the data. You own the data. So it's like, no one can buy the data from us because we don't have the authority jurisdiction over it, and I wanted it that way. Leslie and I wanted it that way from the beginning. So like, let's say someone offered, to buy the platform. We don't want to sell the platform, but let's say they offered, I'm human. Like, what if somebody offered me, I don't know, some ungodly amount of money to do it? I wanted to make it so they're not buying the data. No one buys the data. It's not available for sale. It's the person's data. Just like someone can buy Bank of America. They're not buying bank accounts. It's like you could, but I don't see doing that. But I'm just saying it's just a safety gauge behind it that says it's not even, anyone couldn't even buy it because it's not available like that. Rick, do you want to go next?
First, thank you, Dr. Krumholz. Thank you for doing this. Thank you for recognizing it. Thank you for having the guts to come out at a prestigious institution and be part of developing a plan like this, because I think it's going to help immensely in the future for validity of what we're trying to, or what you're trying to determine. Let me switch my camera here so you can see me better. But yeah, I'm an executive with a very large tech company, which will remain silent. But my life was turned upside down last year after I had the second vaccine. And then unfortunately got the booster, which caused even worse symptoms. But I was a strong advocate, as many people here were, in the belief that that trying to get to herd immunity was the right thing for the country and the world. for a variety of reasons. One of which is I personally benefit from seeing the company that I work for do well. But I've not been able to work for 6 months. My life and my family have been turned upside down by this. And I'm like most of the people here who are out there searching for help. I've gone to Mayo for 4 months to try to figure out what's going on. I was at M Health for 3 months to try to figure out what's going on. And now I'm in a place where I'm like most people here, searching on the forums, searching on Facebook for methods and approaches for symptoms that are working. So here's what I would ask. I mean, and let me just mention one other thing. I'm also an investor and would be happy to help with one of the companies I helped found is a company that does clustering for vision, as well as clustering for data sets like you're going to be discovering. And I'm willing to donate licensing for this product to you to help you and your team. It's a faster way to do clustering than K-means. We can take that offline, but if there's someone you want me to talk to about helping there, I'm personally happy to contribute and help in any way that I can. But I'm curious, have you been looking at, there's a few groups out there that are doing some preliminary research and studies and treating patients using off-label solutions, right? So IncelDX, Dr. Patterson, to name one. There's a handful of other GPs out there that are trying to help people that are part of a handful of groups. I'm curious, have you looked at any of the work that those individuals are doing and looked at any of the studies, the preliminary studies that are coming out with subjective information as a way to sort of understand the sort of correlation between vaccine versus COVID-related injury?
Well, I mean, I've first of all, thank you very much. And yeah, definitely send me a note. Like we'd be glad to engage and see whether or not there's any pieces. I expressed this to Nisa. I mean, I said that, there's still like a lot of claims out there. I mean, first of all, vaccine injured, there's not even enough people saying that there's something real. And then there's a small number of people who are trying a lot of different things, but like, it seems to me like we should be organizing this so that we can feel confident about like what's working and what's not. I mean, if it's a trivial intervention, that's one thing, but many of these things are big deals. And so we need to be organized in a way that it's really easy to run the experiment. And because this is about symptom and disability, I think even with relatively small numbers of people, we can run controlled studies that sort of help us understand, is this working or not? And yeah, and that this is where I was concerned about just the vulnerability of the population. But also, I'm glad to have continuing contact. I think even with regard to the study, like we ought to be passing back information about like vetting. Here's a study. Like, what do experts say about this? And also with Akiko and others, like it's not hard to get like her opinion about like what does this look like. But I think what you're going to see on the long COVID story, just like you were going to see in vaccine injured, is it's not a singular thing. It's like different people's body reacted different ways. And so we're going to need to be able to organize who's feeling what for what reason. But like in the long COVID's got an additional thing, which I think there are some people who may have viral persistence, that they never got rid of the virus. And of course, that's not going to be the issue for you guys. So, there just remains a lot to learn, but I'm eager to put good science to this so that it's not just people making claims or, in uncontrolled studies, but that we know what we can depend on and what really is making a difference. All that being said, as much as you guys are suffering, you find anything that works for you, like, Godspeed, I'm happy for you. But I do want to kind of understand, like, what's this doing to your bodies and what can we do to help? And how do we figure out how to prevent this in the future? I mean, all these things I think are going to be very, very important. But I'm glad to connect with you about this other stuff. Let me just, I know Brenda was asking this question before. I'm uncertain about collecting data, getting your own tests done. So the idea here is both to leverage your, what we call real world data, the data that's being generated about you in the tests and all the things you've had done to you. Like, why not leverage that as research? I call them reagents, like research inputs. And then for some people, we're talking about doing protocolized, standardized blood draws or other things that can be evaluated in the lab in ways that aren't available in clinical care today, but might provide different kinds of insight. And I just will ask one, or at least say one thing. One thing that came up today was, like I said, we could send people a thing where it's even like a pinprick, and we get a little bit of blood and we can run the auto antibody stuff off of that. So like, there's lots of different, I think, novel approaches that. And the other thing, when we're talking about getting bloods, we found a group that can either come to your home or meet you at a Quest or somewhere that you want, that makes it convenient for you, so you don't have to travel or go far. How about Elaine? Do you want to jump in?
My question is, can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, do you take virtual heart patients? Because well, what happened is, not only did I develop a tinnitus, which was, they did acknowledge my vaccine injury, I also developed AFib, and they did not acknowledge the injury. Although I did send the vaccine injury paper to them, I got gaslit by the PA to the cardiologist, but it was abnormal. My echocardiogram was abnormal, showing issues with my left ventricle. And they gaslit me, telling me I didn't have AFib when I thought I did, because I knew it was abnormal. But then I was in a car accident in December, and they actually caught it in the ambulance. So now I have proof. Like, I was like, I told you so. I knew I had AFib because it runs in the family. Like, my mom had it, but not till her 70s or 80s. And here I am in my 50s with it. So how do I know? Is it an injury from the vaccine? Was it something that I was just, you know?
I think what's important. So, at Yale, we don't have the capacity to do telemedicine around the country, but
right.
I think it's important that it gets evaluated. Whatever's causing it, if you have AFib, it needs to be evaluated. I'm glad to.
Yeah.
I mean, you can email me or let me know where you live, and we could try to.
Okay. Well, my dad lives down New York State, down Westchester County, not too far. If I ever visit him, I could go. I've been to New Haven back in the day. But
or you could send me a note, and we could.
Okay, I'll do that. I could get like because then I went to another cardiologist, and they're still not recognizing it as an injury. In fact, she didn't want to see me for another year, but mentioned emergency medicine. And I said, well, I would like the emergency pill, because the hospital put me on blood pressure medicine for the AFib. But it's like, she didn't want to deal with it either, saying, I'll see you in a year. So it's frustrating not to be backed up by a cardiologist who doesn't want to recognize it for what it is, because even if it's just stress, it still triggered it from the vaccine, still triggered it because of the ringing was waking me up and putting me in panic.
I think it's important not to get, hung up on whether they actually acknowledge the vaccine injury, only because there's so few doctors who are going to do that right now. You just want to make sure you're getting the care you need.
The right care. That's the thing. I want to, yeah.
You just need to make sure you get the care.
But I am on a heart monitor now for 30 days. So, because I called and asked them for it. So, and it did catch one of the episodes. But it's just frustrating, not to have.
Part of it is you just need somebody to tell you, like for all of you guys, say, I hear you. I know.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, which I haven't had.
Let me try to go through Michael Anthony, or go ahead, Denise.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, we are all at a point in our illness where we're so frustrated, exhausted, demoralized, and we all want answers. And Dr. Krumholz doesn't have the answers. He's not treating vaccine injured. I don't believe you are. He's really just trying to set up a way to study us. So let's try to keep our questions.
Well, I want to help, and I know different people. Everyone's got different issues, and I'm happy to listen and see if I can help. But yeah, that is true. Michael Anthony.
Yeah, just a lot of us have auto ACE2 antibodies. We've sent our blood work over to Germany, Celltrend, and found that we have those. And I was just wondering if you've heard of those, or if you know if anyone's. I think University of Arkansas or some hospital there is researching that, but just curious if you had any line of sight into that ACE2 auto.
I don't, but that's interesting. But again, it's an example of how I want to take advantage of. Like, if you guys say that, then we're saying like, well, okay, let's have everyone upload their results and like sort of figure out like, what did it look like among the group, and what can we do to get some insight into that. But Yeah, I have to ask Akiko about it. I mean, obviously that makes sense in a way, but I don't know. I haven't seen a study that's, maybe in Germany they've published. I have to look, but you guys can educate me. But if it's something we should look at again, if you guys got a lot of data, then we ought to be trying to pull it together so it's in one place so we can try to do something with it. I mean, anyway, that's my thought about it. The Naomi, you want to?
Yeah, I want to thank you for putting this together. My journey has been very similar. I'm struggling so hard with our healthcare network. I'm on my 5th GP. Is this going to really be a tool then that we can use to roll out, educate, hopefully get to some sort of treatment and some sort of change within the mindset of the doctors? What's the, I guess, grand vision to go from the next step after collecting data?
Well, I think, and when Denise said I was an outcomes researcher, what that means is that, like, I'm interested in, like, being accountable for change, like actually seeing tangible differences. I wish medical research could go faster, so I don't want to give like false hope at the speed of this, but I do think it's a powerful idea to bring people together. And then the other thing is, I mean, when we wrote that piece about internal vibration in long COVID patients, I mean, all of a sudden, a lot of people said, I'm not alone. And people started realizing maybe there is a thing out here. I mean, there's still people doubting long COVID too, right? So it's like, and I've been talking to the government about long COVID. I've been talking about vaccine injury. Like I said, they're spooked about talking about this because they want to push the vaccines. And what I say is, I'm not talking to an anti-vax group. I'm talking to a group that actually got vaccinated. And so, everyone here believed it enough to get vaccinated. The point is, we don't instill trust in a system that won't be honest about what's actually going on. And so if there are people who are suffering, then we need to be able to talk about it. And I think the doctors need to know about it. And some of the beginning is just starting to describe the syndrome itself. And, like, what's one article of 500 people with the syndrome written with someone like me, who I believe has some credibility within the healthcare system, that says, this is what people are reporting. This is what it looks like. And if we get, between people like Rick and others on your group, who are already, working on data, Glenn, you, I mean, we can start, how do we organize this? What are the visualizations we should put together? How do we tell the story of what people are experiencing? Because even unlike long COVID, who's written about just the story of what people are experiencing, who has like credibility within the medical environment? And I can tell you, like, it will be, I'm uncomfortable to write that, because I know there will be a lot of people, because you get caught in this war between anti-vaxxers and vaxxers. You're going like, this has nothing to do with either one. It has to do with what we're trying to understand. People are suffering as a result, we believe, of something that happened. We got to get there. And so, but I think that we can change people's views if we start to get the information out. I'm hopeful still. John M., do you want to say something?
Yes. First, thank you for acknowledging this, and thank you for trying to springboard something to put together data-driven that hopefully a lot of providers can utilize. On that note, as a person with a pre-existing condition, I was actually diagnosed with type 2 diabetes in late 2019, right before all this happened and we all went to lockdown. And I kept my A1C at or right above normal levels. Right after I had my second shot, I manifested essentially right away within 2 weeks a progression of symptoms that were consistent with someone with late stage, a decade or more uncontrolled diabetes, blue feet, vision loss, hearing loss, loss of sensation in my hands, erectile dysfunction, all that stuff, and more. One of the things that I have noticed, aside from the vertical ascent to trying to get conventional providers to acknowledge my symptoms as being something consistent outside of what diabetes is basically dictating, has been extremely difficult. And in fact, in my own struggle, I'm trying to right now be at the mercy of autoantibody tests to hopefully progress to some form of immunosuppressive treatment. One of the other considerations, and I think it's almost to a certain degree, extremely difficult is from a research perspective, trying to become part of a study let's say, take for example, neuropathy. People with elevated glucose levels are precluded from these studies for obvious reasons. And I know that it's extremely hard to correlate a vaccine administration and direct symptoms. But one of the things I would ask is if that is going forward for any considerable research in the future, I can't be alone in this. I can't be the only diabetic who had symptoms explode right after the administration of the vaccine. What considerations will be made for people like that with pre-existing conditions?
Well, I think it's important for us to describe, I mean, people can't be excluded for some of the manifestation of what exactly we're trying to actually treat and help with. So, but I think that kind of advocacy is going to be critical, but you're speaking just what I'm talking about. Like if we can get 300, 500 people who have experienced what you've experienced in that cluster, then maybe, the question is, how does that cluster compare with other clusters? And for people who don't have vaccine injury, and how can we begin to understand that in terms of what might be the underlying mechanism and the approach that we should take? But, I mean, I'm totally with you. I mean, it would be crazy, I think, to exclude people for actually what's manifesting from the condition that we're trying to treat. Let me just try to go through just a couple people who haven't spoken yet real quick, because I'm going to have to leave soon after that. And I can follow up with Denise about how best to help. And I've heard loud and clear this issue about the site and how do we make it easier for people to know what to do and to onboard. So that's going to be a major thing we may circle back to. So I don't know, Rosie, George.
Sorry, it took me a while to unmute myself. Thank you. Thank you for doing this. So I wanted to just say that my symptoms started during COVID and then it exploded after the vaccine. But what I do want to offer is I just had my story published with a lot of fight about, how these symptoms started during COVID and exploded after the vaccine in affiliation with the. And it is getting published, and we are focusing on advocacy and people like me, like healthy people, young, just develop autoimmunity and long COVID symptoms. So if there's anything that you would want to do in collaboration with me in terms of data, I do have access to groups where people like me are there. So for more studies, for more research, it would be great, but it's frustrating going from neurologist to neurologist and just saying it's in your head and there's nothing we can do. And obviously some people get IVIG, some people don't. I don't understand the medical system, how, my doctor advocated I have a strong autoimmunity, neuropathy, and insurance doesn't approve it. And there are some who are getting IVIG and are getting better. So it's been really a frustrating path going from a healthy individual providing for your family to just thinking about being, disability or an uncertain future. So to really be a voice and see how I can offer my help. And obviously, the larger goal is to get the data points and have some therapy for people like us that we could just regain our lives back.
So I'm sorry for what you're experiencing. And I would just say, first, I'd love to see what you've written. That would help me. And then secondly, send me a note. And I'm glad to, let's get people into the study. I mean, let's get as many of those people into the study. And like I said, you all should be like everybody who's in the study, but especially you are kind of advisors to the study. Like, what should we be? How can we best be doing it? But part of it is about like bringing the data together and getting people to be part of it. So let me just go. And so thank you. Thank you for that. Just to go quickly through the rest. I don't know, Taylor Jordan.
Hi, I just wanted to say thank you so much. I'm just very, very grateful that this is being acknowledged and studied. So I appreciate that. And my question is just, what is the plan for recruitment? Because I do feel that there's probably a lot more people out there that are experiencing, whether it be minor or not, some sort of symptoms from the vaccine, but may not even know, since this is not even being talked about or anything like that. So I was just wondering, what is the plan for recruitment? Because I think that there can potentially be a large participant size, but only if people know what they're experiencing.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm open to ideas from you guys about how best to do this, and maybe we could circle back later and any suggestions. And like I said, we're going to try to. We don't think it's really smart to go through sites. You know, it's like it's long. It's a big slog. Doctors choose who they want to go into studies. We want to go direct to consumers. We want to go straight to people, and figuring out how best to reach people through different social media mechanisms, how to make people feel welcome, included. How do we get to, also we're deeply committed to diversity. How do we make sure that all sorts of communities have a chance to be part of it, so people don't feel excluded? I mean, all that is going to be an important piece. Let me just do the last three because I know we're at time and some people are starting to peel off. Nick Ferrara.
Hi, how are you today? Just a quick question for you. A lot of us have traveled to Columbia University in New York to get some testing there for adverse reaction to the vaccine. I was wondering if you guys had collaborated with them at all as far as what they're looking at. They did tell us they were going to get us some results, but no one has seen them yet. So they said they were looking at autoantibodies and all this advanced stuff, but they know about it.
What's the name of the person there?
Jayesh is the guy running it.
No, there was somebody else at Columbia who was doing some long COVID. I mean, first of all, we're happy to collaborate with anyone. Second of all, one of the commitments I think is they need to give you your data back. So again, your data assets should be growing all the time. So the next study you go into, you can share those into that study too. And I'm happy to reach out to them and see what they're doing. But again, you know, my thing is we're competing against the disease, not each other. So I'm happy to collaborate with anybody. It's not a
okay. Yeah, because one of the things that concern that I have is that for me, it's been about 14 months. I've been on 6 months of IVIG. So any samples I give to you now, I would assume are going to be maybe a little different than they were when this started 14 months ago. So
so it's a good point. We're going to need to take into account the time from the vaccine, and then I hope as we go out that more and more we'll be able to get people soon after their symptoms start. So we'll be able to make some comparisons, but that's a really good point. We're going to definitely have to take into account timing issues. It makes it more complicated, but then we're going to go longitudinal forward. So we'll keep following people over time, but that's going to be a piece. Just last two, Michael Anthony, you want to stay? Your hand's still up.
I'm sorry, I forgot to take my hand.
I didn't know whether you had something more. Okay, that's great.
Yeah,
and
sorry.
No, not at all. I do that all the time. And last one just says iPhone. That will end on an iPhone.
Okay, it must be me. I had a quick question about the plan for what duration we're tracking the participants. There was an NIH study, a preprint that just came out where they kind of stopped asking questions, and the conclusion is that they were treated when in reality we know people in the study that were not actually successfully treated. So there's a concern about that I wanted to express and get more information on.
Again, you know, if we do this as a community, then we're fostering this together. I think we should keep going for as long as we think we need to go until we learn what we need to learn. So, you know, my idea is this isn't transactional, it's relational. It's like not about like, hey, let me get this data set from you so I can publish a paper. It's like, can we build a community, a learning community together, collect the data, make it, you know, figure out who can use it, and how can we start putting stuff out that gets people to understand this better. And, you know, what kind of collaborations, what kind of tests, what kind of, can we take advantage of imaging? Can we take advantage of everything you've already had already to kind of, does that give any insight? Even just a study on like all the different treatments people have tried, you know, just to try to give some illumination here to this. So anyway, I don't, the nice thing was the Yale IRB sort of in the end didn't cap the number of people we could bring in. Usually they'll say how many people you need. They don't want you to enroll more than you need because they think it's not ethical to bring in more people than you need into a study. We agree. But in this case, we say it's pure discovery. Like, let us bring in 1 million people if we can. Like, I don't know how many we need. And I don't know how long we need to follow people because we're just learning and we're going to try to learn together. So that's the spirit of this, to try to make progress together. And one day we'll see, well, maybe we don't need to study anymore because we've figured out everything we need to figure out. That'd be nice. But you know, I think there will be a story to be told in the longitudinal nature. What happens to people over time? Who gets better? Who doesn't get better? What can we learn from that? I mean, that's what we're going to do. And we're going to also need to seek funding. We need to figure out, like, you know, but if we get a big group together, I think we can go to places and say, this is worth studying. Like who's going to support this and so forth. But it's just getting started and trying to give some impetus to it. So I know I've gone over time, and also I've got to go to something else. Let me just express my appreciation to all of you for having taken the time to join and listen to me and to consider, that we can do this together. And I will circle back with Denise and put this together and sort of figure out what the next steps are. But I really do want to include you and involve you in figuring out like how to make the site easier. And then like, if you're interested and you want to be part of this, then, and we can start spreading it, then let's make it a thing and try to figure out how to do it. And if you've got other questions from me, like I've tried to answer questions like no data moves without your permission. We're not selling data behind your back. We're not trying to sell you something. And we're trying to build a learning community that's eager and poised to be part of these studies, fill out surveys, allow their data to come in. And in certain cases, blood and saliva or other things that may give greater illumination to what's going on with them, share their images and things. But that's the general idea.
Harlan, before you leave, do you want to just mention the weekly talk that Leslie has that anyone can attend that might have comments?
Yeah. Leslie runs this sort of office hours. Like she just says, anybody wants to drop in on Kindred and talk to her and give her feedback. And I don't have I can give you the link, but it's just like I think she does it like from 3 to 4 every day. She just, for people who want to just drop in, even you could drop in for 5 minutes or 10 minutes or longer and give feedback about like, even include like what you don't like, what you do like, what you think the site should be doing, or ask questions. I know she should have been here, but then she would have said I talked too much and she would have been right. But
I'll try to publish.
I can also have her come and talk to you guys. She definitely will. She'll be very excited to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we should let you go.
Thank you all.
Thank you for doing this. We're all very appreciative, and it's a work in progress, and we'll all be
my
participating.
heart goes to you guys. I mean, I know I just can't even imagine, because it's a combination of what you're experiencing and the way people interact with you, and the health care system is difficult enough on a good day, but it's poorly equipped to deal with this. And so I hope we can make some progress together.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you. If anyone wants to hold on, I'll give you the websites to access Kindred. So it's very simple. It's hugo.health. And then you go to Kindred, and then you go to listen, and you sign up, and then there's various surveys that are slowly being added to the site. So again, it is a work in progress. It's not completed yet. Anything that seems awkward, let us know, send me a message.
Hey, Denise, would you mind sharing the recording for this? I know that you guys are recording it. That would be helpful for us for educating other members of our medical community.
Absolutely. I'll post it on all the Facebook pages. Are you guys all connected to those pages? Okay. And if you can hold on just 1 second, let me see if I can find how Dr. Krumholz's wife is holding this daily session, actually. Hold on, let me see if I can find it. Well, I'll post it. Has anyone attended those sessions here? Let's see. I don't know, I'll have to look for it. I'll put it on the Facebook pages. But this is the first really highly esteemed researcher who wants to look into our reactions. So we all should participate. We should get everyone to participate. We need large numbers. Obviously, there are going to be subgroups of people because we aren't all the same. We have different aspects to our reactions, different lab results. And that's what he's going to try to look at, is what are these subgroups, look at them individually, see, how their immune system has been altered. And, this is a great start. And who knows where it will lead, but hopefully to good things. Does anyone have any questions for me? I've been working a little bit with Dr. Krumholz just to set up surveys and questions of what's appropriate to ask. One thing that dawned on me is a lot of us are getting IVIG, which would totally corrupt any autoimmune workup that they would be doing, because we're obviously getting antibodies from strangers put into our bloodstream. So that will be an issue that they'll have to deal with. Maybe they would want people who aren't on IVIG or have been off of it for a certain period of time so that those antibodies die off and they could see our own. Any questions?
Regarding the recording, I work with Denise to put it up on 3 public places: the react19.org website, the Odyssey channel. If you type in React19, you might find it, and vaxrecoveryproject.com.
Great.
So if you can't get into the private Facebook groups, we'll try to put it up publicly there, and then.
And we'll put it up on React 19. So that's an easy place to find it.
Great.
And hopefully we'll have more sessions like this. Dr. Krumholz is very nice and eager to help us. So, and send me any questions that you have. All right, I guess we'll call it a day. Thank you all for attending this. Thank you very much.